Hello friends, good afternoon and welcome to EduSet Live Lectures. Dear friends, as you know that we have started a series in computer sciences, namely networks and graphs, and today we are conducting yet another lecture in the same series. In today's lecture, we will try to understand the concept of strategic decisions and diffusion modeling. To discuss this topic, we have with us our subject expert Dr. Aditya Sinha. Dr. Sinha is Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Sciences in an eminent university in NCR of Delhi. Without further ado, I would like to welcome ma'am to our studios and request her to start the lecture. Welcome ma'am.
Thank you so much. So viewers, in continuation to the lecture series on network and graph, today we are going to understand about what is the impact of to be strategic while a link formation and to have some kind of decision making which involves some benefit and loss, and thereby calculating an overall utility before actually establishing a link with any, say, between two entities or some organization, company, etc. There is one more phase that will come across in this lecture, that is about diffusion modeling. Diffusion is something like a process that, or rather it's a phenomena through which we will be able to forecast even before the thing actually happens, that if some information triggers from a node that is connected entity within a network, then what is the fraction of the network will get propagated with that idea or with that information. Okay. So just to have an idea of what are the topics that will roughly go through. The main is about what strategic networks are actually. As in the last lectures we went through random and uniform networks where the link formation was randomly decided, and uniform why? Because all the nodes were equally important to form the links. Okay, then we went for preferential attachment in which we prefer which node to get connected to, and obviously we studied about the hybridization of these two with certain fractions, say some alpha or some positive value. So here we'll see about how the impact of strategies play while dynamically deciding which links would be important, that is they will be beneficial to maintain, and which are those links that are say imposing some penalty and they should be discarded as soon as possible. And then we'll come across how the link formation and degree distribution, etc. Then will come to know about the parameters that are involved in the system, because be it any model, strategic decision making model or preferential model or random model, every model is having some kind of parameters that governs how the system will actually work. Okay, so we'll go through some of the parameters. And then strategic formation model, how the formation is being done. This will be explained with the instance of heterogeneous connection model. There are obviously other models. We'll choose this one as is one of the benchmark models. Then heterogeneity in strategic model. Yes, this is very important. As in connections model, there are a variety of versions, like basically we'll be talking about clusters, even clusters or uneven clusters, that is uneven distribution of node and links, etc. Then we'll visit the diffusion part, and again to benchmark models, the basic benchmark BAS model, and a little improvement on that model is SIS model. The benefit is that after studying these two models, you'll have an idea of how to map any real world model and into a platform in which you can decide which node, as we have studied about centrality measures, so which node is to be highly central, and among those central nodes, if you have more than one central nodes in your network, which node will actually give you more like propagating effect in the network, right? So let's begin with the strategic network now. As opposed to uniform model, the preferential model, in these two models, the link formation was rather too crude. Like in uniform model, there was no choice at all with the user. So it's very, very opposed to what the realistic environment is. Because if we, let's say we talk about social network, that's the most lively example of connected networks, right? So in this network, what happens? People, they come into the social network, maybe Facebook or Twitter, and they tend to offer a friendship, or if in case it's a Twitter, they have a deliberately, they follow someone even only when they know that person, right? They don't like randomly choose any a person and follow them. Normally this doesn't happen. So uniform model is a very basic model which actually exactly does not appropriately apply to the realistic environment. Then we went for preferential model, in which the link formation was actually proportional to the degree of that particular node. That is, if a node is having a high degree, then that node is more likely to be available to have even more connections in the near future. Okay, again, this is also not very suitable, but it was a little more, it was having a little more realistic flavor as compared to the uniform model. Then again, we went for hybridization of these two, but none of these three models, they don't actually take into consideration that what type of benefit we are getting out of it, or would be getting out of it once that link is established, or are there too much cost incurred, you are penalized or something. I mean, the maintenance cost is high, it can be anything, that there are so many factors, will just go on. So for this, we have a strategic model with us. Here the keyword that comes is the strategy, right? So what actually the strategy could be in terms of real world domain? It could be plans that are implemented only after analysis of an outcome. Okay, so plans are made previously before implementation of an actual system, say, but it also again depends upon the analysis that is carried out behind the curtain even before that implementation is done. Okay, the parameters involved here for planning is basically two: the cost and the benefits that are associated. Cost could be seen as a compensation for maintaining a link, or it can be expenditure, or something to be penalized. Okay, so it can be a penalty as well. Then we have benefit. Benefit can be thought of as a reward, or an income, a source of income, or some kind of advantage, maybe social importance that we are getting. Say we in Twitter, if you are being followed by some very renowned person who's having a verified account, say for example, then you get a good amount of benefit out of it, right? Now, then we have a utility function to be calculated. Now, this utility function depends upon what proportion of benefit and cost is associated with a particular plan. That is the strategy. Okay, now this function should analyze the joint impact of these two parameters and to find whether the network should get initiated with that particular plan, or we need to change our plan, etc. Okay. Now, implementation of strategy is nothing but it's the establishment of links, formation of links. The same formation of links that we were doing it with a toss of a coin in case of random model, and preferentially in case of the other model. Okay, so here implementation of strategy or implementation of a plan means that, okay, two nodes have decided to have a joint collaboration with each other, again owing to certain constraints or strategies or plans, and that is the thing that we say that a link is established between those two entities, right? And the strategy is implemented, yes, of course, it's only implemented when the impact of benefit exceeds the cost incurred, right? So whenever you are getting more benefit out of some link formation or strategy, only then you'll go for that particular plan in general, right? It happens in that way only. Now, the link formation, actually how it happens, and before that, the factors that we should know about is a consensus. That is the type of link agreed upon is either undirected one or the directed one. Okay, directivity tells a lot about what type of information flow is towards from which component towards which component the information flow is happening. So whether there is a essence of directivity or it's an undirected graph. Undirected graph, they are like directivity in both the cases. Okay, like if A is directed towards B and B is directed towards A, then we call that A and B have a undirected link, right? Then the adaptability, this is the degree of adjustment required during topological changes. Topological changes are what they are like if the network layout gets changed due to maybe mobility of the users, or maybe due to change of certain service providers. Okay, we are jumping from one network to another. So there can be different ways due to which the adaptability requirements change, and as a result the topology changes. So what sort of degree of adjustment is required in such cases? Then we have the network state. Here the choice depends upon whether it's a static or dynamic nature of the network we are dealing with, whether the sort of that we were just speaking about, the mobility of user, whether the network actually supports mobile users or not. Okay, so this is the main concern, or whether whenever those users are mobile, then there is a chance that they might be like hopping from one network to another, and the resource allocation, everything will be scheduled on the fly. So it imposes a completely different set of challenges. So these are the factors that influence whether a link particularly it should form or not. And because whenever a link is formed, apart from cost and benefit analysis, the network parameter is also important. Like when you are establishing a link, what sort of all networking parameters are also involved, networking factors are also involved. So those things should also not be compromised. Okay. Then yes, we have link intensity. Link intensity, it's the weightage of link basically, whether it is constant or variable. The links can have a constant measure, or it can vary with respect to time. Now agents can be sophisticated also, as it reflects the stability in choice. As it's written, in wired infrastructure, links once formed have stability, while in other mobile scenarios the links are unstable. Yes, it happens again owing to mobility. Some of the links can be very unstable and therefore very unreliable, and will not be right to choose those type of unreliability involved in such links. Okay, because it will create unreliability in the system as well. Now, after having an overview of all these factors, what's the relevant question that would comes in our mind is the network that are likely to form. Which are those network actually, whether they exist, and if they exist, are they very stable, and even if they are stable, then are they very efficient to form? And in case of efficiency, we can ask for even one more question, that if it's an efficient one, then to what extent the efficiency can be exploited. Right. So these are some of the questions that revolves around strategic network formation. There is a link formation in strategic network. Now the parameters that we have in strategic world. The first is obviously the nodes. This is all about nodes, which can be synonymously called agents or entities or real world objects. Okay. So nodes are a part of interconnected network of some say it's denoted by the graph G, and it's actively involved in decision making to form links. Yes, that is what strategies are all about. Now we are allowing our agents to get involved, that is the nodes to get involved, whether they actually want to form a link or not, depending upon the cost benefit analysis. If it were only up to the agents that whether they should form a link or not, then it will get a simple preferential network. But when the preferential thing is supported with a valid conclusion of a cost and benefit analysis of the link formation, then it becomes a strategic network, right? So the role of the node in case of strategic network gets extended to some case. Now we have links. Yes, links are what? They are a pair of agents that are forming the connections. That is, those pair of agents that we will decide whether their analysis is to be done, whether those the outcome of the analysis is within the threshold or not. That is, if the utility is less than some threshold, then the link will not be formed, and if it's above some threshold, we go for that link, like that. Then we have the cost factor. Here, each link is associated with a cost, okay, because link maintenance involves some kind of cost in that, right? That is, what type of strategy you are implementing. It will require certain like substructure, the substrate what you have, okay. So here it can be either constant or variable. The cost that is decided upon, it may change with time or with certain other factors, or whatever the initial cost is taken, we can go with that also. Okay, so accordingly we have the factor C, and we have CIJ, IJ being the nodes. With the different, as the pair of nodes change, we get the cost as different. Even it also can vary with respect to time. A link between two entities may also vary with time, like whether the same link is for a particular time, it's having some higher value, or with some deprecations also in the near future, right? Now, benefit, the same thing, it can vary or it can remain same. But here, as cost is always an integral factor, benefit will lie between 0 and 1. Again, depends upon the model assumptions, etc. Okay, and shortest path length, if we are using this, Lij would be our symbolic representation for shortest path length between node I and j. Utility is a function that already described about. Now here, how the connection model actually looks like, how the utility function is calculated with a variable cost and benefit, and with constant cost and benefit. Now here, the utility function can be synonymously, as it is given in equation 3, it can be like just calculate number of neighbors, and if that is directly connected, obviously the nodes that are directly connected with a particular node I, okay, then, and if the cost is constant, then it's nothing but just the count of the neighbors in that set. Now let's better understand this with the help of this instance. Say we have 5 disconnected nodes, and the network formation is just being started. So we want to analyze whether node 1 and node 2 should get connected or not. If it gets connected, then what are the parameters that are defined in this formula, right? For U1, we can see that there is only one direct link. Node 1 is having only one neighbor, that is node 2, okay? So the benefit that it is getting out of this connection with node 2 is delta, okay? We are taking a fixed parameter, delta and C. The benefit and cost, we are taking it to be constant, we are not varying, just for simplification purpose, okay? So U1, it needs the benefit, so the benefit is delta, because there is a direct connection. So node delta squared delta cube, if it were an indirect connection, we would have gone for higher exponents of delta, but here since a direct connection, so delta. And again, since there is a link, so some cost has also to be seen as a penalty. So the cost is also C, because it's the only direct connection existing, okay? Similarly, for node 2, the utility will be same as that of U1, right? Because as of now, it's a symmetric, as the network is viewed from node 1 point of view or node 2. In the second network state, say 1 and 3, node 1 and 3 are also getting connected, so no more symmetry. Now node 1 is getting benefits out of 2 nodes, 2 and 3. And also, since these are direct connections, costs are also involved. Okay, so maintaining both the links, so it's like C plus C for 1,2 link and 1,3 link. So it's nothing but 2 delta minus 2C for node 1. This is a utility function. Now the very interesting thing is when we are going for finding out utility now at this point of time, as given by example B, is now what the utility is getting is delta, that is 2 is connected to 1, right. So a direct benefit out of it, which is delta. 2 is also connected to 3 via 1. So it's an indirect connection of distance 2 halves, right. So it's a delta square minus only C, no 2C. Why? Because 2 is maintaining a direct connection with node 1 only, though it is indirectly connected to node 3, but it's not maintaining that connection. That connection is actually maintained by node 1. Okay, so node 2 is not having to undergo some overhead of maintaining relation with node 3, right. So since it's going via 3, so node 2 will only incur the direct link cost. So here U2 you can see with respect to the example in the first one, part A, you can see that it has now changed to delta plus delta square minus C. Now as the case with 2 is, the same symmetric case is with node 3. So here we get the same value delta plus delta square minus C, and for all the other nodes, as in case of figure 1 and figure 2, that are simply isolated nodes, not yet connected to this growing, growing part of phenomena, they are all zeros, because they have no connection to get benefit out of it, and they don't have any connection over which they have to invest some money, that is to incur cost. Okay. Now let's explore even more if the network is built in a even more complicated manner, more links are getting added, and you can see that the utility functions will keep on changing values. So as the network gets densed and densed, the utility function calculated will be a little complicated, that is, we might be going to the higher versions of benefits, and if we are talking about the C part, the cost part, it will tend to become alpha C, where alpha can be anything more than 0, right. So say, let's suppose this is a final look of our the layout of our network in the example. So here you can see the final values that we have got. Now just to exemplify, if we take the benefit as 0.5, okay, and some cost that is greater than 0, and we put the values, we get a utility for node 2. Now this is how actually the utilities are calculated. What we have done before, we have first we have laid out the instances of the formula, and then we have found out the formulation, the utility formulation for each node, and now when we have actually the values, we can just come across actual integral value of each of the nodes, right. So and from where these values can come, delta and C, they are all heuristic parameters. Sometimes they are like they judge from the learning behavior, the system, as the system evolves and evolves, so what type of cost they have to maintain, maybe in some units of rupees, crores of rupees or something, right. It can be even like that also. So it depends upon the system assumptions and the system behavior, the whatever heuristics are associated with the system largely impacts. Now let's talk about the heterogeneity in strategic model. Here we need to observe some model related things. The topological layout depicts similarity characteristics. Yes, the topological layout always does highlights what type of similar characteristics that could be exploited, and whenever there are this type of phenomena, we often get benefit out of it, right. And the second thing is immediate geography. It's a reflection of cost. Now topological layout is a reflection of benefit, so there has to be something that is a reflection of cost. It's the immediate geography incurred in the maintenance Okay, so cost occurs from the idea that the local links has to be maintained. The local links in the sense the neighbors that are distributed in the direct hop. Okay, so these direct links or the local links has to be maintained directly by a particular node. So it incurs the cost upon the system. Okay, for example, say cabling expense. If you are directly connected to a particular one computer is directly connected to another computer, then what is the cable cost, right? For laying down that cable, what amount of cost is incurred? So it can be a cost factor, and different network maintenance, etc. And in a social realm, if you are talking about these links need to be sustained among people with a similar background. Very much true. Now, in topological layout, what happens? This obviously influences the type of benefit that we are getting out of that system. So here we say that the distance, the nodes that are in the distant, the benefit that we get from those nodes will be very less than the local links. Local links tend to give more benefits also, irrespective of the cost that is involved. They also tend to give you more benefits, and these benefits would be reaching you more quickly, in fact. And what else? The intensity of benefit is more. That is what we are talking about. Intensity is also more, and the benefit is complementary. It received from diversity. The delay involved from the communication of the peers is less, obviously, because it's directly coming, so it won't face any other sort of network congestion or maybe collision, packet drops, etc., etc. And since it's acting that way, so the information relevancy is also high, because why? Since the data is quickly being received at the particular node, it means that the data freshness is very high. Whenever the data is like generated or gathered, it will quickly or rapidly will be sent to the whichever node is our concern, right? So the freshness is very important here. In applications where the freshness is important, we go for more and more direct connections. At least we try to go for, by extending the communication range, and there are many other ways to do it. And here in social context, if we are talking about, the examples could be family, friend, colleagues, partners, or any sort of systems that are connected in an environment that is closely connected with each other, like a tightly coupled system. Okay, so with our observations now, let's go for a connections model. In this system, what happens? We take an application in which we suppose that we have some number of islands. Okay. And these islands, they are acting as communities, and communities, whenever we are talking of, we have a number of actors in it, or players, we can say, right? So here we can see that in figure 1, in the homogeneous substrate. Why homogeneous? Because we can see 3 clusters over here, and these 3 clusters are having equal number of nodes in it. Okay. Equal number of nodes we can see here. So we can say that these nodes, with respect to this model, we call them as actors or players. So say for example, if we have k islands with j players in each island, and there has to be some cost c incurred to maintain the relationship between the people within the system, or say the island, and we have some higher cost involved to maintain the intercommunity links, as intercluster links. If we are moving from one cluster to another, then obviously we will be getting incurring more amount of cost. Okay, and within the community, the cost would be a little bit less. Okay, it will be a little bit low. Now, the recommendation, what is recommendable here is to have even more and more compact neighborhood within the islands, and higher coefficient of clustering. That is what it is. Whenever we have a higher cluster coefficient within a cluster, or within a like a close neighborhood in the context of island that we are talking about, then it will give you high clustering and low network diameter. That is the ideal thing we are hoping for. Okay, thank you. Welcome back, viewers. Now, since we have done with the connections model, let's go into its instances. So here, say we have taken an example over here, an instance of the network. Here, say node 18 is our concern, because it's not possible to go for every node, because each node will give you a very dense formulation of the as utility function. So let's see with node 18, that can be seen over here. Okay, so the total I lines that we have here is 5. So value of k is 5, and since we are dealing with a homogeneous substrate, that is the underlying structure of the clusters is same, as each of the cluster is having 5 nodes. But the nature of the network layout is heterogeneous. Why? Because they are not equidistant from each other, or not all the clusters. As we can see that the 4 clusters, they are equidistant, but the 5th cluster that is there at the origin O, it's near to some cluster, some nodes, and it's far from other nodes. Okay, so if such is the case, then we call it heterogeneous connections model with a homogeneous substrate, that is with homogeneous type of clusters. Okay. Now, say for example, we can see here that the benefit is cost benefit combination here. The first is 4 delta minus C, from where this value is coming is starting from the node 18, we can see that there are 5 nodes that are directly connected to it. Okay, so within this cluster, these 5 nodes are since they are directly connected, so we are getting a direct benefit. So delta plus delta plus delta plus delta. Okay, so that way we are getting 4 delta, and since these are all direct connections, so there is to be associated a direct cost also. So likewise we have a 4C component. So this is 4 delta minus 4C. Okay. Next we have delta square. Now how this is happening? Say for example node 18 and the one that is connected to the origin. Now this is in 2 hops, only this node. Okay. So we are having only one factor of delta square. Then we have 7 delta cube. 7 delta cube is like this way. It's like it's connected to 7 nodes, and from these nodes 7 means that these 7 nodes are lying at a distance of 3 hops, which is why we are getting a delta cube component. Okay. Similarly, we have 12 delta 4 for other nodes in the network, leaving those 7 nodes. We are now left with the 12 nodes. Okay, so these 12 nodes are connected to our node, that is node of concern, node 18, and it's like it's 4 hops far away from node 18. That's why we are going for delta to the power 4. Okay, and other parameters, they remain same. K is 5 and the J is also same as 5. Now let's take another instance. So you can see that whatever formulation we have got for node 18, that is a node that is situated at a very comfortable position. It's not forming any kind of, it's not like acting as a bridge node if we are to do some kind of intra-cluster communication. Okay. Let's take up some node that is there and which is acting as a bridge for it's bridging inter-cluster communications. Okay. So what happens here is okay, we are getting 5 delta out of the direct benefits, and then we are getting 4C. Okay, that is also fine. And then here you can see that is a new component, capital C. This is the high cost. Okay, because it is a node that is connecting other clusters as well, unlike the node 18. Now we are ready to go for the diffusion part. Okay. So now having a clear idea of what many types of networks models could be there in terms of link formation. It can be random, preferential, hybridization of preferential and the random model. Also then we went for the strategic model in which there is a proper cost benefit analysis, right. So now we move for the diffusion part. Now say we have the links formed. We know that our network layout is now how it looks like, what are the different constraints under which our network is being laid, and what are the different parameters, the influencing parameters, what type of input it requires, what sort of output it is going to produce, even the estimation of whether a link should be getting established or not depending upon the cost benefit analysis, the utility that it is providing. Now when we have all this sort of information, and earlier that we have read about was centrality factors, like which node is important in which sense, whether the node is having a close neighborhood, then we call that it is having a high centrality in terms of degree, that was a degree centrality, or it could be a closeness centrality depending upon how good it is reachable from one position of the network to another position, part of the network, how it's accessible. Also it could be a decay factor, whether say for example a community is there and how the direct and indirected benefits are coming to a particular node, that is a decay factor, decay centrality will be there. So we have good number of centralities in our mind, and we have all the network parameters and how the links are being formed. So with all these knowledge in our mind, now we are in a position to judge that which node, which central node, which significant node given a particular network with a particular kind of link formation should be selected for diffusing ideas or diffusing a certain concept about, say, some new launch of a product or something in the network. Because this is actually related to the real world system. The earlier things that we have studied about, they tend to be there, but they are not the phenomena that we actually deal with frequently being in the real world. Okay, but this is a concept that literally comes in every phase of life. Say for example, there is some company who has launched a new product. Okay, now how to make people know about that they have launched this product? Obviously through some kind of propaganda, maybe through advertisements on the television, right? Or the best way is to do is, because people are always not watching television, even the, maybe whenever say that a particular thing that information is being telecast, people are not watching at the time, so there could be so many things. So the better one is, why not sending like end-to-end emails or end-to-end SMSs or like end-to-end information, so as to get a reliability that yes, I have given this information to the interested users and they have received it. Okay, so for that what happens, which node should initiate this transmission of idea, the process of transmission of idea, so that the other entities who have received this can also again propagate to a even higher dimension. Okay, so it can be a concept of product, or in any belief from a belief system, or any small or big idea, can be related to the political system or etc. Okay, so ideas can emanate out from any system. So, the spread of information is what is very important from the viewpoint of diffusion. Here we actually analyze the user behavior, so it is a more kind of behavioral analysis in response to that newly injected information. Why injected? Because it is given to the system, okay, system in terms only to a particular node or a particular set of nodes, because whenever say a company is doing kind of promotional attempts, it will not go to all the people and they will hand over the pamphlets, or they are also not going to email each and every people or the person who are might be interested in the product all over the world. So, they will be sending this emails or promotional mails or promotional offers to only few users, right, and these few users will be those who are highly central in some parameter or other. Okay. And obviously, the link formation and the substrate of the network, the initial layout or eventually changing layout, etc., will always matter, that is there, but they will only send this information to the nodes that are highly central according to their analysis. Okay. Now, when the central nodes receive this information, depending upon their connectivity and activity, how fast this information is likely to get propagated in the new future. Okay. So, this is the perspective with which the companies begin with their propagandas. Now, the third thing is to evaluate the benefit or whatever it can be loss also in the spreading method. The significance is also to emphasize the impact of constraints over the particular diffusion model, and obviously to manage the resource assignments or engagements with respect to a particular person or the say community as a whole. Now, what are the different stages in diffusion? Owing to a different model, obviously you have different stages, okay, because the researchers who propose with a new diffusion system, it's all up to him how he sees the real world system, how he sees the real world demands, and makes up the diffusion model, okay, with respect to a particular application. Then it becomes an application oriented diffusion system. But in general, what sort of stages are likely to be there for a successful diffusion process to occur? The first is initiation. There has to be some number of nodes that acts as the seed nodes, the initiators. Okay, these are the nodes that trigger the diffusion process through internal and external actors. Okay. So, what might be the case is whether due to some externalities or some internal factors, they are getting the information or they are asked to trigger that particular information. These nodes who are actually triggering at level 0 are known as the initiators. The process is better known as initiation process. Then we have the adoption phase. In this, the nodes, those nodes are called adopters who decide to accept the diffused idea that is being triggered by the initiators or the seed nodes. If some of the nodes are not in the first place ready to adopt the ideas, then the idea will thereupon it will get dropped. It won't get propagated to the further nodes that are connected to these adopters. Then the third phase is spread. The spreaders are those nodes that act as forwarders or relay of the incoming information. Now, all this phenomena jointly provides an assistance for the whole diffusion process to take roots in the network. It can be a real life network or computer networks or any sort of networks in which there is a interconnectivity between the entities. Now, the factors that are influencing diffusion. Clearly, it is the information recency at the first place, how recent the information is, how fresh the information is that is being available, because the diffusion model should not be designed in a manner that the diffused information is being received at a very greater delay, and if the delay is very high, the freshness of the information is gone. So, maybe the information is no more important to people. Okay, not even from the viewpoint of the initiators. So, information recency is very important. Then comes the heterogeneity in connectivity pattern. Okay. Clustering, the type of community, underlying structure of the community. Then time of the node creation, okay, birth instant of a node, better to say. Then the temporal connectivity patterns, whether it will inhibit some kind of dynamism or it is purely static. And the instances could be the user mobility in the physical world, or the type of social interactivity, whether the interaction once established will be there for the entire lifetime, or it is like supposed to get changed. Okay, it depends. And then change of similar behavior, yes, there might be a group of people who are behaving in a similar pattern, but maybe after some time the similarity in behavior might change. Some other user might enter into the similar system, and some user might get exited out of it. So the number of users in the system in this exhibiting this particular type of similar behavior might change, or it might not change according to system assumptions. And the fourth one is alteration in the hierarchy of belongingness. Yes, if a node, say for example, is a part of one community, might with the change of time may belong to the part of some other community owing to his interest. Maybe he is interested in a particular political party or a political event or some kind of like association, and other sort of point of time he might be switching his opinion, right? It can be like that also. And even with the more mobility, say for example, some user is taking service from, say, some service providers, say service provider A. At point of time, he might be thinking that no, I'm getting better options from provider B, so I'll switch on. Okay, so this type of factors are there that keeps on influencing the diffusion process in the network. So one model is a BAS model. This is the very basic benchmark model. Though it's a basic model, but it has a very important role because it takes up two states, state 0 and 1. It's a discrete states transmission, and these states are always there in whichever higher version of diffusion model you take upon. Here the states, they represent the actions or the behavior of the user. The transition, as you can see here, goes with a probability, some probability q, that if 1 is the initiator, then node 2, what is the probability? The node 2 will be given this information goes by this factor q. Reverse transition is not allowed, it is a one-way transition, and instances could be a product used, a seen movie, or viral disease cause, or it can be a place that you have visited. So once you have visited a place, you cannot go back to the state that no, I have not visited, right? You have caught a viral, you have caught some disease, no, you cannot go back to the state that no, I have not caught that disease. So it goes like this, no reversal is possible conceptually. The parameters are rate of spontaneous adoption, Q is the rate of imitation. P and Q, both the parameters are deciding how the system should behave. And Ft is the fractional population who adopts the state 1 by time t. And this is a model how it looks like. The rate of diffusion with respect to time, dft by dt, why dt? Because since it's with respect time, so dt will be coming in the denominator part. Now we have two components over here. The first component, as marked by red, is it shows the state 1 actually, the influenced people, the people who have already got with this idea, they have got diffused with this idea. So this interprets state 1. And the second part is 1 minus ft, that is those who can possibly change because they have not changed yet. So this is the state 0. Okay, so with both this state, how you can see that mathematically it has been taken up in this formulation, and it decides the rate of change in the diffusion with respect to time. Now the interpretation of BAS model. When we plot this BAS model, we get a S-shaped distribution. It's also known as a S-shaped model. This happens when Q is greater than P. And originally the distribution are governed by P because P is the probability, there is initially how many nodes have got this idea that let's diffuse whatever the new concept is coming to them. Okay, so originally it's largely governed with the fraction p, and later it is conquered by how fast the other nodes are starting to imitate, they are starting to grasp this idea. Okay, so it's a slow start if the value of p is very small, and it's a rapid distribution if q tends to be more. Okay, and the trend of the distribution, it gets stable as ft moves towards 1. On solving this Bass model, we get the solution as ft equal to the formula that is given in the highlighted in red, it's exponentiation. But here you can go for derivation if you want to have a closer look at how the Bass model is derived in terms of like integration. It's a simple integration, you can just go for it. And here you can see that what we have done is we have taken f of t as y and the timeline as x. So it gets formulated as dy by dx, a very simple formula, a very simple formulation over which the integration can work upon. So we get this formula. Now here there are two cases. The first case is if ft tends to like 1, means that 1 minus ft would tend to 0. It means that this, the second part of the Bass model, if it gets 0, then the whole thing will turn up to 0. It means that the fraction of non-infected population is going actually towards 0. Most of the fraction of population has got diffused with the idea, and now they are not like willing to have another round of propagation. They are already diffused with this idea. Or if it's a kind of biological disease, then everyone has got this particular type of flu or seasonal disease, etc. Okay, so this is the understanding of what happens if ft is tending towards 1. And then we have case 2, where if what if ft is tending towards 0. It means that now here the rate of change will become constant to p. It means that no one gets diffused. There is, if we are talking about a biological system, if we say that there is a full immunization, then there is no scope for infection. So the diffusion process of maybe that virus has got, it's not changing with respect to time. So these are the two cases of Bass model. Now let's come to SIS model. This is a little improved one. As you can see here, that though we are still having those two states, S and I, here the nomenclature is being changed, susceptible and infected. Okay, but they are the same concept, state 0 and state 1. But what's different here is we have two links, one going towards the infected and then one coming back to the original state, the susceptible one. Susceptibility is something like vulnerability to catch a particular disease, or vulnerability to get influenced by a newly launched product or some new idea. Okay, so we have two probabilities, two links, two probabilities are associated with it. And unlike Bass model, SIS allows nodes to change behavior over time. Yes, it does. And here the transitions are reversible. Okay. Instances could be catching some recurring disease and then getting immunization, and then you are cured back. Okay. Then again, it can be a seasonal event. You have decided to vote someone, some party B, and then you thought, no, it's not a very good party. Let's go stay with whomever I was associated with it earlier. So it's like a toggling between a party A and party B, or some political idea or some belief system. Okay. Or it can be computer virus. System got infected, went to the infected state, then diagnosed with some antivirus software, came back to the original state. Okay, so such could be the instances. And since we have two links over here, one more link is added, so it adds some more complexity, some more parameters to the system. So here the notations are epsilon. We have epsilon to signify the rate of spontaneously getting diseased. Okay. And then the rate of infection from the one who has already got spontaneously infected. Okay. And then the fraction of infected population given by rho, then delta, the rate of recovery. Okay. So these are the four parameters with which this model comes up. Again, here we can see that we have two components in multiplication. The first is 1 minus rho, that is the susceptible part, not yet infected, so likely to get infected. The second part is infected, that is the spread due to maybe in some infection, etc. And then we have a recovered part also, which says that there is a chance to return back to the susceptible state as well. And since we have a recovery part and this infected part and recovery part, there, so even if a person is infected or is diffused by some idea or infected by some disease, there is chances that it can get back to the original state. Okay. So we have a steady state behavior over here, and in steady state behavior, as we know, that the rate of change becomes 0. Now, if you just derive it, it's just derivation of the rate of change equated to 0. So you can just equate it to 0 and find the values of the rates associated with the system. You come up with these two solutions. Now, what are the impact of these two solutions? Let's see. The first solution, that nobody gets infected, okay, because it's 0. And the second solution, 1 minus delta by V, this is greater than 0, which means that if delta is high, the recovery rate is more than the infection rate. There is an equation cannot take roots in the system. Infection, or it can be a diffusion of idea. That is, whenever our spread process is not allowed to take roots, it means that there is no meaning to learn all these diffusion models. So we won't go for this. Mainly, it is like if delta is less than V, that is, infection spreads at a higher rate, then it could recover. At that point of time, diffusion actually occurs, and we can study diffusion process of the system. Okay, the conclusion is that SIS model is very much similar to BAS model, but has a little more realism in its process of execution. And what are the drawbacks that are mainly associated over here is uniform interactions. We are taking random interactions, very random interactions, and randomization is only there at the system end. Okay, in the real world, randomization doesn't happen. We go by preferences, we go by choice, we go by strategic plans, and etc. So in some way or other, if we can put strategies into diffusion, we can again get better models out of it. Okay. And here we are missing the heterogeneity in the degree also. We are taking all nodes with same degree, and yes, we are missing the local patterns. The local patterns, because local patterns, they exhibit homophily. So we have to take the homophily, the segregation part into concern also. So I think this will give you a good insight of what the diffusion models are, and now with all these ideas, you can come up with your own models, all new factors, and different types of combination of models can you can generate some new models out of it according to the applications that we have studied. Thank you.
Dear friends, on that note, we would like to thank Dr. Sinha for coming to our show and delivering this wonderful lecture. And thank you, dear friends, for watching our show. Stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you.